Good morning. Hello. We're back after spring break, something like that. Welcome to the second faculty lecture for 2017-18. This is an old tradition. I haven't quite traced the ultimate roots of it, but every year, for many, many years at King, King students have elected 2 faculty members to do a lecture on something of interest to them, very often connected to their research, and sometimes taking it a bit abroad from that. And every year, faculty elect 2 students to do the same. I encourage you, as this is the time when we do that, thoughtfully, to vote for faculty you would like to hear speak. We put a lot of energy and effort into these, and I do hope that it's something that you'll take advantage of as a student. We have one convocation left, by the way, just for your planning. That's going to be on April 2nd. Sarah Bessie, who's coming to us from British Columbia, she'll be here in the morning and evening on April 2nd, and then there's honors convocation, and then that's it. The end is in view. I glance down at Ben's notes, and I see, thank you, Martin, for the gracious introduction. We'll see. We'll see about that, how that goes. The first thing I want to say about today's speaker is how to pronounce his name. Tkach. Personally, I'm just going to say this, I'm hoping it catches on, Tkach. It kind of sounds like a rapper. Tkach. Just throwing that out now. In fact, it's Tkach. And so that he can hear this correctly pronounced from the entire student body or some decent percentage of it, I want you to say it with me. Tkach. 1, 2, 3, Tkach. Good? That's good. You're welcome. Dr. Tkach is Assistant Professor of Security and Intelligence at King. He arrived in 2015. And he has taught political science and security and intelligence courses for us with great skill and great energy. His research agenda, I'm going to read the following sentence from him because I couldn't have written this. His research agenda focuses on the causes and consequences of security privatization and non-state actors' involvement in conflict. I didn't write that. Not quite sure what it means. It's all right, it's good. He's received support for this research from a number of governmental agencies, and including the United States Agency for International Development and the Joint Special Operations University. In addition to his teaching here, he maintains an active research agenda, which is no mean feat for King faculty. He's published in Information, Community, and Society, Communication and Society, Peace Economics, Peace Science and Public Policy, and Conflict Management and Peace Science. He spent his undergraduate career at a school not unlike King, and I think that is going to show up a good deal in what he has to bring us this morning. Dr. Tkach has an unusual mix for us of a background in a liberal arts college and also working at a Research One university. And he brings the strength of seeing those things together. So having attended Whitworth University, he then went to Texas A&M, both for his PhD and for a postdoctoral fellowship at the Center on Conflict and Development. His research has taken him far and wide. He has been either a researcher or lecturer at Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, the American University of Beirut, the American University Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates, the University of Exeter in Britain, the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and Texas A&M University, Qatar. Am I saying it right? It's not Qatar, it turns out, Qatar. So just for his sake again, once again, Qatar. 1, 2, 3, Qatar. Close enough. He's not impressed. So I'll let him take that up. We congratulate Dr. Tkach on a new position he is taking up this fall at Mississippi State University. And we'll miss him here, but glad that he has gotten that position. I believe that as a native of North Dakota, his move first to Washington State and then to Bristol, Tennessee, and now to Mississippi State represents a relentless escape from the cold as he goes farther and farther away from the Dakotas. So please give him a warm welcome today, Dr. Benjamin Tkach.
Good morning. So that was a gracious introduction. Certainly not one that you ever expect to have. Rarely in one's career does one have a captive audience. And so I want to take a moment and thank those who have contributed significantly to my life. My lovely wife is in the back. She told me not to cry. I didn't cry at my wedding, okay? I cried at my wedding, it's all right. All right, so she is truly a remarkable individual of indomitable strength and grace. My life is enriched because of her presence in it. My parents are also here. Good parenting is hard, as I am blessed to be learning with Claire. And I had excellent supportive parents. My brother, a consistent supporter and goal setter, has had a more profound impact on my life than I think he knows. And then, of course, there's my little girl, Claire. From the time she entered the world at 25 weeks and 4 days, 1 pound 11 ounces, slightly smaller than a ruler, she's been a constant source of strength and joy. And now, we can all be thankful that little girls look like their moms and not their dads. And so I also wanted to take a moment and recognize friends and mentors in my educational endeavors. First, a group of professors from Whitworth, from John Yoder to Dale Soden to Corliss Slack. Each of these three have something unique that they bring. John Yoder, more than anyone at Whitworth, helped me get through a very difficult fall semester. Dale Soden, the rarest of professors who can recognize a student's quality, and then in my case, still work with me anyway. And Corliss Slack, a professor of medieval history that can make even the dullest of topics something that you can debate. And yes, that means aspects of the Spanish Inquisition, how terrible an actor Orlando Bloom actually is, and how horrible the movie Kingdom of Heaven actually is. But there's one redeeming scene in the whole movie. If you haven't seen it, don't watch it. What you should see is Google this. There's a scene in that movie that made a Oxford-educated, Cambridge fellowshipped scholar laugh out loud. It's that scene where the towers actually come down because they pull them apart. Those are detailed in the chronicles, the historical chronicles of the Middle Ages. But she never conceptualized what that actually means. And so if you have to endure a 3-hour movie, at least find one scene that's worth watching. When you start a journey to a new destination, reflection occurs. When I look at the list of previous faculty lectures, I think it must be a mistake that I'm on it. Martin Dodderwhite, the epitome of a university religious scholar, the bearer of the burden to tie faith and learning together, in workshops, and workshops, and workshops. He's the functionary of stately faculty contributor to search committees. And, we all know, creator of his own system of time. Craig McDonald, an individual that embodies the fruits of the Spirit. I unfortunately didn't get to overlap with him very much. But those few moments that I did are filled with the fruits of the Spirit. That is a rare thing. Not just in a Christian culture, but a rare thing in general. We have Story, Hudson, Ong, Traynor, DeFord, purveyors of academic life that enrich students, shape lives, and benefit society. When I'm at my best, I embody the qualities of these influencers. And for my students sitting in the front row, which they never do in class, but they're here today, they don't see any of those qualities. Well, that's because that's just me, and I'm a work in progress. This lecture, despite Martin's complicated sentence that I did write, now hearing it, I should rewrite, has nothing to do with what I actually study. This lecture develops out of my King 4000 class. I had the privilege of teaching King 4000 last semester, and all but 2 of those students were new to me, and so I used those opportunities of attendance to find out about these students. And I asked them a question. What are you concerned about? Because I struggle with names sometimes, I have them write that down, and I take the quiz and I match it to the face because I'm thankful that we have what I affectionately call Stalkernet. Now it's just Facebook. But before this, when I started college, the profile images were all you had to go by. There was no ability to Facebook stalk someone, right? And so I expected answers to be graduation, employment, or senioritis, but that's not what I got. I got a concern about the divisive nature of the presidential election. I got concerned that American society is being distributed ideologically to where we cannot engage each other. And so throughout the society, and since I'm leaving I can say this honestly, we didn't necessarily stick to the syllabus, but they did all these same assignments, so it's okay for SAC COC, and yes, I'm on one of those committees, so it's okay. But what we did talk about was civil society, engagement, the role of identity, and how these play within partisanship. And so because I didn't talk about them to the full extent that I would like, I'm going to take some time to do that today. And so today what we're going to look at is political polarization, the reasons for that polarization. And I'm going to make, I hope, a convincing argument for the importance of a liberal arts education within this sector. All right, so first let's think about what polarization actually is. Polarization, ideological polarization, occurs when parties become more ideologically distant and internally homogenous. What I mean by this is Republicans and Democrats, if we think about mass polarization and elite polarization, are much more divided today than they have been in the past. People are going to be divided on topics, whether that's foreign policy, whether that's the role of the poor, whether that's taxation, whether that's the hot button issues, gay rights, homosexuality, abortion, transgender, issues that we know move the electorate. If polarization is real, and I'm going to leave it up to you to see whether it is or not, our leadership has become much more distant on these issues. It turns out that Mitch McConnell really doesn't like positions held by Chuck Schumer. Right? It's not that they just get along, they don't get along on some of these fine details. No, they are ideologically distinct. And the parties are more internally homogeneous, which means if you go to the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention, these people think and act and behave similarly. Right? This creates, I would argue, a social problem. And that is the inability to engage the other side in civil discourse, which is what we will discuss today. When we think about Congress in particular, the image on the left is from 1981. A bygone era where many of you are not alive, can't remember. Remember, I asked you your first political memory, and when I started teaching, it was President Clinton's inauguration or the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Now, I'm almost horrified to say, when I ask my students their first political memory, they say President Obama's second inauguration. Woo! What you see in 1981, it's hard to see in the color, but on the left you see blue and on the right you see red, and that Republicans and Democrats in 1981 are clustered, but there's much more interaction between them. When we move forward to 2011, what you see here on the left is Democrats and Republicans, and a few Democrats servicing as functions for allow legislation to pass. What you see in the dots in the middle are essentially individuals who cross party lines to vote for something that, in this case, the Republican majority wants to move through, and vice versa. Right? What we know is that elite polarization is real. And what I mean by political elites, people in Congress, the President of the United States, people who participate in party politics, people who go to convention, people who oversee primary election. There's not much debate, and there's really not much scholarship on the fact that elites are polarized. It turns out Congress is polarized. There's reasons why Congress is not able to pass legislation. But the question still before scholars and before us is the mass population polarized? Are you and me polarized? There's two explanations for this. And I study international relations, and this is American government. And so I am sure that Paul Kelstead, somewhere in Texas A&M, is going to cringe because he's responsible for teaching me what I know about this. And he will say, no, that's not true. It is. Right? Polarization. If polarization is real, it is starting in the 1970s, Americans have become increasingly divided. The middle, the political middle, is disappearing. The biggest proponent of this is Abramowitz at the University of Emory, that says this is real and this is divided. The other argument is that we're not actually that much more divided. What we are is better sorted. Political elites lead parties that enable sorting of the mass public that make parties diametrically opposed. Now these have different observable implications and obviously different mechanisms, but the key difference here is that American positions have remained largely stable over time. What has happened is that the parties are better sorted. Finorina at Stanford provides this argument, and I draw heavily on his work here. So when we think about mass polarization, I'm going to quickly run through this because this is the headlines that we hear. This is a concept that I think we're much more familiar with. The antipathy between parties is deep, it's growing, and it's extensive. Pew just had a recent survey where they said that this is pervasive and that it is something that you can track, and it's that trend has been present, right? This is not confined to a small minority of activists. This is actually just us. For perspective, if we were to take this group, we would essentially find two groups of ideologues and a group in the middle, right? And that because of that, you would not be able to engage. Polarization energizes your political base. When you think about getting out the vote, who's supposed to go get out the vote? It's the partisans. It's the people who really believe that Republicans or Democrats are right? That I'm a Democrat and that means I'm absolutely right, and if you're a Republican, you're absolutely wrong, or vice versa. When we think about what this looks like, you don't need to look too closely at this graph. What you need to recognize is that these mountains look different. 1994 to 2004, the mountain looks basically the same. The median value of Republican and Democrat on an ideological spectrum, right? So we ask you a host of questions. You answer based on your ideology. The difference between the 50th percentile of the Republican and the 50th percentile of the Democrat is basically the same between 1994 and 2004. But by 2014, what you see here with these lines here is that it's starting to separate. Right? Mass polarization argues that because of that separation, we are going to see a difference in governance. We're going to see a difference in how we engage. And that difference is so profound that we can no longer engage the other. Right? The other side is now something that needs to be combated as opposed to cooperated with and compromised with. All right, now political elites are polarized. If we think about party sorting, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this, not to convince you that it's right, but because it's a topic that honestly is too complex for CNN and Fox and Msnbc to talk about in 30 seconds, so they don't talk about it. Okay? Political elites are polarized. I don't really think there's much debate there. But the mass public is not. This is where that question becomes. American positions have remained consistent. But what has happened through sorting is that parliamentary parties are starting to occur in a majoritarian system. And let me rephrase what I mean by that. We operate in a single district, winner-take-all system. We have a member of Congress that if he or she wins the most votes, they win that district. That's a majoritarian system. In almost all other countries on earth, majoritarian systems produce two large parties that are basically catch-all parties, that the differences between the parties is not so great. But what is happening in the United States is that our partisans are leading us in a way that we become better sorted. And what that means is that we have basically parliamentary parties in a majoritarian system. The era of having a conservative Democrat or a liberal Republican, according to this argument, is over. Right? Reagan Democrats don't exist anymore. If you are liberal, you belong to the Democratic Party. If you are conservative, you belong to the Republican Party. There is no gray. And we think about these issues and we think about how this divides America. And we ask ourselves, what are issues that we can be sorted on? What are some issues that we can be sorted on? I'm going to go right to the heart of one of the most controversial. And I guarantee someone's going to walk out of here and you're going to think, I'm telling you what to believe on abortion. I'm not. I'm asking you to read 6 items and figure out what you believe yourself. And then I'm hopefully going to convince you one way or the other that either party sorting exists or that mass polarization exists. Because the observable implication is our politics are more polarized. Why that is different. All right, so abortion. We're clearly divided. Yep, good call. Yeah, I got a PhD to tell you we're divided on abortion. Yeah, I'm telling you. Dr. Kelstead right now is rolling over. Republicans have basically produced a party that says no, never. The party plank for Republicans says that abortion should not happen ever. It's immoral, period. Democrats have done the other side. That said, yeah, you should have an abortion whenever you want it. Here are the 6 questions, and I'm going to read them to you if you have trouble reading them, that the General Social Survey asks America. So I'm going to show you next how American opinion has not changed dramatically from 1977 to 2014 on this issue. I want you to think about these 6. The first 3 are what are considered traumatic abortions. Right? Mother's health. Woman becomes pregnant as a result of rape. There's a serious chance of defect in the child. The literature would call these traumatic abortions. The bottom 3 are considered elective abortions. The family is low income and cannot afford any more children. The woman's not married and doesn't want to marry the man. She's not married and does not want any more children. Why we use this as the example is that our politic has split us into pro-life or pro-choice. But this survey allows us to compare what people actually believe. So, okay, my beautiful daughter is here, and she counts effectively to 14, and she just turned 2. So all of you can go from 0 to 6. Okay, and I don't mean that in insult to brag on my daughter. She's really impressive. That's because, again, we are all thankful children take after their mothers. So when we think about what actually happens in this, do you have your number? Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud, please. 0 to 6, what's your number? What we actually find is those top 3 bands right here, these 3 right here, are the traumatic abortion experience. And largely speaking, the majority of Americans support these. From 1977 to 2014, you have basically 70% of the population saying this is okay or this is acceptable under some conditions. Where there's tremendous disagreement is what the literature would call elective abortions. And here we see that there's not even a 50-50 split. But the key thing for sorting, the key thing for polarization, is not whether Americans' opinions have changed dramatically or not. It's that if you fall into a certain category, the parties have sorted you into voting in their issue. Another way to think about this is, if you're a single voter issue, and your single voting issue is abortion, the Republicans said if it's more than 1, you vote for Democrat. The Democrats say if it's 6, it has to be 6. But what we have demonstrated, what we have found, is that the self-identified Democrat only supports abortion at about 4.5 times of these 6. Not 6, right? The party says forever, always, under all conditions. But the average Democrat actually says, we shouldn't support abortion in all cases, right? The Republican Party says no abortions never, under any circumstances. But the average Republican is not 0. The average Republican is about 3.5 circumstances. Right? But what party sorting has done is says if this is the issue you care about, you pick a political camp. Right? These differences in how sorting works is not minutia. This is not something that is, in the truly definitional sense, academic. Right? It produces a different outcome in our politic. Whether we are divided as a people or whether we have been effectively sorting matters. And it matters profoundly. And so there are 3 social implications that come from these. We have a difficulty governing. Right? Congress is really good at passing legislation, legislation renaming landmarks and post offices, period. Congress is not good at passing anything else. Right? And I'm speaking as someone who remembers most of my lifetime. We're not good at this. We're just not. We have party division. We think about how different organizations form. And most importantly, for my students that talked about it, we talk about the fact that individuals can no longer engage in debate. I can't count the number of times I've heard since the presidential election that people would go home to their own families and could not talk about politics. Oh, what are the 2 issues at the American table you should not talk about? Politics and religion. What do we talk about then? Like, seriously, how bad the NCAA is, right? It's a cartel, people. When you look at the structure of the NCAA, it's a cartel. It is. It looks more like a drug cartel than it does an organization, right? How long can that discussion last, right? For those of us who are not musically inclined, I can't talk about music very long. I can tell you I appreciate it. I can tell you I can play piano before I could read. I'm done, right? Great. How long did that take? 4 seconds, right? When we think about the things that we should be able to talk about, we need to be able to talk about religion, and we need to be able to talk about politics. Not least of which because we are living in a Christian society, and we're going to schools. Right? And so when I think through this, my students ask for a laundry list of rants and things that I disapprove of, or things that I think you should know. And the list got really long. I think they had about 28 items. And so as I worked on this, I thought to myself, how can I do this in 30 seconds or less? And I can't. And so I decided on 3 areas that we need to really focus on, and 3 areas where I think that I can steal really smart people's wisdom and tell it to you, because it's certainly not my own. And first is the lack of common vision. When we think about the lack of common vision and what this looks like, we think about what the American dream actually is. The American dream is that you come to the United States or you're born in the United States, and through hard work and dedication and education, you can make your life better. That it doesn't matter how you come to our shores, that our shores offer liberty, and through liberty you can pursue your dream. Condoleezza Rice effectively argues that the American dream is no longer a common vision, not least of which because of social immobility. When you think about social immobility, there's a Federal Reserve paper that looked at the 30-year-old earning demographic and compared it to the previous generation. So we're comparing what is effectively my income versus my wonderful parents in the back's level of income. In 1970, 30-year-olds had a 90% chance of earning more than what their parents earned at the same age, adjusted for inflation. In 2016, a 30-year-old only has about a 50% chance of making more than their parents. The lack of social mobility indicates that we are not able to move out. If you start making a low wage when you start, yeah, I'm speaking to all of us faculty members, you're probably going to end your career at a low wage. We are in the middle of developed nations in our ability to move socially. Right in the middle. That lack of common vision weighs heavily on me because I come from a family that has believed in that our whole lives. And my brother is certainly a product of it. When we think about a common vision, and I think about what King has to offer, I think about a Christian community of shared beliefs. Right? We actually have a mission statement. We prepare students in our Christian academic community to excel as thoughtful, resourceful, and responsible citizens with a passion for serving God, the church, and the world. Shared beliefs does not mean we agree on what beliefs are, particularly as it relates to the Christian faith. No, moreover, I would argue that having shared beliefs offer opportunities for engagement. By having a common vision, it allows for debate in other areas where before you may have those debates, whether it's on politics, whether it's on religion, whether it's on the CAF, or whether it's on good coffee or bad coffee, you must have a common vision to frame those debates and allow them to happen. By having that common vision, we are able as a community to extend and engage. We think about truth and grace. And I'm a product of my community. I'm a product of Whitworth. They talk about an education of heart and mind. One thing the liberal arts opportunity has that other schools and other areas do not is the fact that this can even be up there. The fact that we are not just training you to get a job, despite what your parents want and despite what society says. Yes, that is the number one thing. What's the top thing, students? What's the top thing? Graduation. Second day that I have my students, what's the top concern you have as a student of King University graduating? Lord, I hope the second is that you learn something, right? And that we actually teach you something, that we transform your life in a meaningful way. But let's not kid ourselves, a college education still matters. You're going to make 70% more money in your career on average than just with an associate's degree. I can't remember the high school one, so I'm going to skip it. Right? So we have to think about what we teach and how we teach it. Jack Ma, if you're not familiar, he's a billionaire. Really smart guy. He's Chinese. He runs the Alibaba Group. Spent some time in America. And I think he's utterly brilliant. Not least of which for his views of education. These are direct quotes. Teachers should learn all the time. Teachers should share all the time. Teachers should expect others to be better than you are. The essence of teaching, the essence of having a common vision is recognition that teachers must give of themselves. And I would argue that happens in no better place in higher education in America than a Christian liberal arts institution. I went to one of well, it's actually the world's, it was ranked 19th in the world, one of the world's best universities for political science. And I saw undergraduate students sitting outside offices waiting for their professor to show up. One time I walked by a student and I said, you do realize this professor's not coming back this semester. Well, I've got to talk to him about my grade. I'm not telling you not to sit here perpetually for 8 hours. What I'm telling you is that it's not going to help, right? At King and at other Christian liberal arts institutions, you do not find that. We have changed the way education needs to be taught. Jack Ma would argue that technology is going to radically alter how we engage the world. We cannot teach kids to compete with machines, he says. The skills that we need are value, believing, independent thinking, teamwork, care for other. That soft part, knowledge, we will not teach you that. I watched an interview with him where I just want to stand up and scream, that's what we do! We don't need to change what we do, we just need to get better at what we do. Having classes on literature, having classes on philosophy, having classes on chemistry, having classes on physics, it's not the individual classes that makes the education. It's the combination that is uniquely found in the liberal arts education that makes us better. You want to have a job, a robot-proof career? Use this, not Wikipedia. Anything that you can find in Wikipedia, anything that a computer can do better than you, it will. No, I cannot forecast the future, though I have a few investment recommendations. But I can say this, the future will not look like the present. Nor will anyone who says, oh, I know what the future will hold, know what it does. Right? We thought the Industrial Revolution was going to mechanicize how we shave. Right? We're all going to have mechanisms to shave us. And it turns out that didn't happen. Right? Next thing that we need to think about are echo chambers. Right? Fox News, Msnbc, since 2007, they changed their business model to cater to a liberal audience. We know from scholarship that viewership of these two networks increases partisanship based on who is there. Right? But I can't go a lecture without at least taking one shot at Twitter. We know also that Twitter takes over. There's a brilliant new study in Science, arguably the world's best scientific journal. They look at 126 rumors. They classify whether they're true or not based on 6 independent checking organizations. What they found is that falsehood spreads much more rapidly than the truth. A falsehood can reach anywhere between 1 and 100,000 people. Truths about stories, about terrorism, about politics, about sports, rarely reach more than 1,000. And then perhaps the most insightful aspect of this, which is ignored by most of the media, because you actually should read the articles like Laura Ong makes her students do. Who spreads the falsehood? Is it people or bots? And it turns out it's people. We like novelty. We like new. We like shiny. Right? Bots, they basically are an equal percentage distribute true and untrue rumors. Right? It's a bot. There's a reason we have the human aspect within communication and literature. Right? What we find is that falsehoods diffuse significantly further, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth. Arguably, this is an area that we have much to say about. Ralph Keynes, from his book from the post-truth era, wrote, "Truth has become such a contested category that most persons go through life expecting to be lied to be recipients of dishonesty, to be confronted with endless misrepresentation by advertisers, cultural leaders, and lies that now can be meaningful data in their own right." Right? We think of Orwellian doublespeak, and we think of the differences of truth versus not. And I'm not talking about little t truth here, where baseball caps can actually be branded for other purposes. It's still a baseball cap, folks. I'm not talking about the fact that states interfere with other states' democratic elections. According to Don Levin, a scholar who published a new data set, from 1945 to 2000, one particular state intervened in democratic elections 81 times. That was the United States of America. Okay. Nor am I talking about the truth that lotteries are basically unethical taxes on poor people. According to, and this is a real journal and a real article, the Journal of Gambling Studies. You learn a lot when you prepare for this. The poorest third of Americans buy approximately half the lottery tickets. And since that's an $80 billion industry, think about that. The poorest third of Americans willfully shell out $40 billion of their income at the chance of the American dream for the lack of common vision. Well, I would argue that we need to think much more deeply about truth, and that what a liberal arts education does is it allows for the pursuit of big T truth. Right? Obviously, with the few minutes that I have left, I'm not going to take on postmodernism's confusions in its totality, but take my word for it. There are absolute truths. We would argue that they are there. Hi, Claire. When we think about what they are and how they are, for us in a Christian community, it centers on Christ. Right? But we also have to remember the importance of humility. As we learned last semester, it's not just enough to say that big T truth exists. It's not enough to just say, oh, well, Scripture's true. Okay, great. What does that mean? Well, I don't know, it's just true. You got anything else? No, we don't. When we engage on big T truth, we have to recognize, as Miroslav Volf said, our coziness with the surrounding culture has made us so blind to many of its evils that instead of calling them into question, we offer our versions of them in God's name and with a good conscience. We have to be willing to engage the fact that what we believe may be wrong, and actually is wrong, and have the courage to change opinion. Only in community, only in relationship can that absolute truth be found. Can that absolute truth be revealed? And I would argue liberal arts are much better able to do this than others through transformational learning. Kelly McGonigal, another scholar at Stanford, apparently I've got an itch. The process of becoming critically aware of how and why our assumptions have come to constrain the way we perceive, understand, and feel about our world, changing these structures of habitual expectation to make possible a more inclusive, discriminating, and integrating perspective, and finally making choices or otherwise acting upon these new understandings. This statement of transformational learning is threefold. Challenge your assumptions. There's no better exercise, including everything that I have taught and what I had at Whitworth, than when you walk into a religious class and someone challenges you on what you believe. Not simply because what you believe might be ridiculous, or it might be true, but simply you need to actually believe it. You need to be pushed in what you believe. And so in some cases like mine, I traveled far. I lived in foreign countries, lived in atheistic countries. I was challenged with what I was taught. For some of you, that is simply writing an essay that says, what's the story of Genesis? Is it allegorical? Is it metaphorical? How literal is it? Is there any literal aspect to it? Transformational learning not only challenges your assumptions, but it asks you to change. And by changing, you become more inclusive. And then finally, we ask in a liberal arts education for you to go out and to change. Think of your cross-cultural experience. I'm leaving, I can say this. I've already resisted temptation several times. This is probably the most underutilized aspect of King education. In some cases, we send students to New Jersey. In some cases, we send them to Atlanta. In some cases, we send them to the poorest areas of Appalachia. And in some cases, we somehow make a justification that because you're from California and you came to Appalachia, that's a cultural experience. It is. All right, as Martin alluded to, it absolutely is. I am not decrying the validity of moving. This is the 6th U.S. state I've lived in, plus the District of Columbia, and two foreign countries. It's different here, okay? It's different. But is that enough simply to say, well, I came and I experienced? No, it's not. We must have structure around those expectations. Finally, when we think about reasons for political division and we think about polarization, the one that actually started this lecture and the one that where I end it has to do with the role of the other. When we think about the identity and we think about the failure to see the other. Polarization, whether it is real, means that we don't see the other person. We see that you are a Republican. And I had a graduate student say this. She said, as she was leaving because she couldn't do math, I can't wait to get to DC so I can just start hating Republicans again. Not hating their policies, hating them. This was 11 years ago, and it still sticks with me. Because to me, that was the dehumanization that says, it's not about what they believe, it's about them. That is something that a democratic polity cannot overcome. What the liberal arts education gives us is this ability to see others. Now, this does not mean that all opinions are valid. It does not mean that all positions are valid. Right? I've made an argument, and I would give you an extended one if they give me the rest of the day, to make an argument that absolute truth works, and because of that, we can build an epistemology and we can build a moral code from that, and then we can actually make judgments on behavior. What we have seen, the rise of Nazism, what we saw in Charlottesville, has no place in America. None. It's wrong. I've been a defender of free speech my whole life. Having watched that, some of me makes me think the Germans might be right. Some thought is dangerous. Some thought is wrong. So when we say we cannot see the other, what this means is that we have led to an exclusion. Exclusion is the cutting of bonds. It's the taking oneself out of the pattern of independence. It is the separation of you or me from the community, from the common vision. When we see this, what it says is that me as an individual has sovereignty over all decisions. That cutting, that exclusion becomes dangerous. What a Christian liberal arts education allows is for embrace. It argues that from what we position ourselves is a recentering. Miroslav Volf again says that the very center of Christian identity lies on an all-encompassing change of loyalty, from a given culture with its gods to the God of all cultures. What a King University degree is. What is unique about it? The lexicon or the jargon here is, what's King distinctive? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that. But what I can say is what's distinctive about a Christian liberal arts education, which I am much more familiar with, is that we push you to consider, to move your center from who you are in your ego and who you are as a person into something else. That doesn't mean every student needs to be a Christian. Actually, I think that's counterproductive. I actually think that's quite unhealthy for not only a democratic society, but a Christian institution. Right? If your opinions can't withstand the opinions and the argument of someone else, you need to reevaluate what you do. Instead, at the core of the Christian faith, Miroslav Volf tells us, lies the persuasion that the others need not be perceived as innocent, or in our case, right, in order to be loved, but ought to be embraced when they are perceived as wrongdoers. If we put that in the context of polarization, what it means is we need to see the individual first. You need to see them as an individual who has political opinions different from your own. When we think about what a liberal arts education provides, I would argue that it provides these three things. It provides vision. It provides vision in a changing world. It provides transformation. Not just because the faculty invest in you, but through community, you invest in each other. And then finally, I would argue that it offers embrace. Not an embrace that says, oh, all things are acceptable, all things are good, all things are whatever, you can believe whatever you want. No. Right? There's truth in the world, and we have to engage it. But that we are humble enough to recognize that that embrace might mean that we're wrong in some areas. A Christian liberal arts education, I would argue, is the most valuable education you can have. Is it going to provide you with the most income? No. I'm an educator. My brother is going to be a vice president of Boeing. Right? It's not exactly economically equivalent. But what it does provide is the ability to engage, the ability to cross party lines, the ability to shape the world that you want to make. And because of that, a liberal arts education is the most valuable and arguably the most important social democratic institution facing us in education. Thank you.
I remembered at the 11th hour that we do have a plaque. Also, let me introduce you briefly to Ivy Ritchie, who is going to be working with the chaplain's office and me, and also with student travel. This is her first Monday on the job, so please join me in welcoming Ivy. She's the one you have to beg for chapel credit, so get to know her well. Anyway, that was a remarkable faculty lecture. I think you'll agree with me that this represents the greatest thing that we have at King. Ben exemplifying that for us. We have a wall plaque in lieu of a check. So please join me once again in thanking Ben Tkach. That's all we got.